You're watching the New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
Since its inception, Amazon Web Services, AWS, has been the best place for customers to build and run open source software in the cloud. AWS is proud to support open source projects, foundations, and partners.
All right, here we are live at KubeCon. This is day whatever. I mean, between day 0 and day 1 and 2, it gets a little confusing, but we are here, and I'm joined for this conversation with two people who work together, who come from different companies, and you both, though, have a lot in common, as you can kind of tell from our conversation we had beforehand. And this seems to be kind of really the essence of what this means in open source, especially with these much larger projects. We're going to be talking about Crow, and with me is Jesse Butler. Hey, Jesse.
Hello, good to see you again. Thanks for having us.
You bet. And Jesse is Principal Product Manager at Amazon Web Services, and Nick Slattery, who is a Product Manager at Google Cloud.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so this came up in a conversation with Kelsey Hightower, and in a fireside chat, and I asked him, hey Kelsey, what was it like for you in 2014? Getting involved, what was it like for you as an individual? He's like, well, actually, my story begins long before that, right? It actually began when he, first found Linux Magazine and pulled out the CD and was able to then, load Linux, right, on Ubuntu. And, and I'm curious about your stories, and how that commonality then works with projects like what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about Crow, which is a Kubernetes data framework, which simplifies the creation of complex Kubernetes resource configurations. We'll get into that. But when you start working on a project, you already have some commonalities, don't you?
I think for us it's interesting because I have more of a Kelsey story where, back at that time I was working in containers, but in Solaris, Zones, which was not open source, and we were sort of looking for a way to integrate with some kind of more broadly used tools, and Docker came along.
Yeah.
And we're like, there it is, right? And so we found this way of saying, hey, we can leverage, open source, the community to collaborate together.
Yeah.
And I was telling you earlier before the podcast, I work with a couple of people now at AWS, Phil Estes, Dims from the Kubernetes community, and I've known those two gentlemen for years. Phil Estes and I first met when he was at IBM and I was at Sun, and we had started the Open Containers Initiative with a number of other people, including folks that Kelsey worked with. And, we met at IBM, coming from other companies, going to IBM for lunch and whiteboards and talking was really crazy. And that's how kind of we met in person. We had mutual kind of goal for our customers to help simplify some aspects of resource orchestration. We found out we're working on similar things, and I invited some people from Azure and Google over for lunch at AWS. What was that like?
So I kind of have the opposite story to you and Kelsey. I've mostly, for my career so far, I've worked on closed source products, relatively new to open source. This is only my second KubeCon, but...
Welcome. Welcome.
But it was, it was apparent that what we were working on was broadly applicable to Kubernetes, and that we didn't intend for anything that we're working on together now to be some differentiated product for Google. So we thought, okay, let's do it as open source. There was a lot of luck involved as well, because Jesse's team happened to have a community meeting that we found out about and were able to join, and that's how we initially started talking, and it just kind of spiraled from there. But yeah, for me, it's been a new experience for sure, but very rewarding personally, but also kind of changed my perspective on business as well, because it's not all kumbaya, a lot of companies at KubeCon now are building it open source but trying to build some enterprise product around it. but then making that kind of business decision to do something as open source versus closed source was something that was new to me as well. So that's been actually really great learning from you and more experienced people, how that trade-off is made and why things should be open source versus closed source. So yeah, it's been a great experience, honestly.
That's where we get the same team, different company line that a lot of us say, and that's what we mean. Like, it's, if you can build a team around a community need or something in a community project where it makes sense for it to live or to grow or even just to be introduced as an idea, you can still have a day job. They don't have to conflict, and I think that's the really great thing about the CNCF community is that I think it's that success just amplified. Like, look at the conference around us. That's basically what all of this is.
Yeah.
So that reminds me of the fact that you guys are both musicians, right? And it's like sometimes it's like bringing together a band, isn't it? For these open source projects, everyone plays kind of something different.
It is a lot like that.
And I'm thinking about Crow, the project we're going to be discussing, and how you came around to get that started. Like, what was going on, that needed attention, that was getting to teams all over the place, especially as they were scaling out clusters.
Yeah, I think for both of us, we share a commonality that we also are product managers for managed Kubernetes products, and our customers have a lot of difficulty with orchestrating resources in Kubernetes. I think we're at the place where a lot of our customers, especially the sophisticated ones, are building with Kubernetes. They don't say, I've run a deployment, I'm there. It's really, they're building Kubernetes-enabled platforms. They're using it to build, and it's hard to do. Now, one of the things that they are doing is using a lot of different resources, and they want to use them together. They want to orchestrate their creation. There might be a value from one resource that is injected as the configuration element of another one. How do you order those, time them? So we found like there was a lot of different bespoke solutions for that. You were working on one, and we were working on one. We said maybe we should all work on one. Put all the wood behind one arrowhead. And I think that's kind of where that started for us, where we had the same motivation.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are basically two ways that products get made in these big companies, and one is company pushing something, like it's strategic to Google or Amazon or any other company, and then there's customer pull, right?
Yep.
You have all these customers at KubeCon that come to us and very adamantly say, we need you to do X, Y, Z. And I think we were all experiencing that customer pull. So that's why our team at Google was already investing down this path. Amazon were as well. Our counterparts at Azure were investigating but hadn't actually invested in anything yet. And we realized we were all experiencing this same customer pull. And part of that pull was the multi-cloud aspect as well. People were saying to me,
100%.
I don't want something that's Google specific. I don't want something that's Amazon specific. I want something that is Kubernetes native so that I can run it and use it in any Kubernetes cluster provided by any vendor. So I think that's kind of what actually brought us together is the customer pull that we were all saying, right?
And the realization that, Kubernetes is the new POSIX, right? It's like there's things on GCP, there's things on AWS, they are very different. Customers use Kubernetes to abstract those things away as an open standard. Please don't build something proprietary on top of that, is kind of what we heard from customers.
Yeah.
So we said, okay. And so, we kind of got in a room and had several calls, and we talked about it for quite a while. And sort of took some ideas from both camps, and Azure definitely contributed some ideas, and then we all sort of came together and said, this is what we want to do. And the way that we're framing it is really sort of as a Kubernetes capability. We don't really, at this point, have the intent of building another sort of big bang CNCF project, because there's already other ones that do a lot of those things. And the mission is sort of to say, how do I use whatever I want, but keep that standard layer? How do I keep it the same on different clouds, different environments? If I want to run a cluster on a stack of Raspberry Pis in my garage, I want to be able to use this solution, right? So that's what makes it a really good community project.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's one difference in your analogy about us being musicians. When we play music, it's our artistic expression, right? And it doesn't matter if you like it or not. But in this case, we really only want to build things that people want to use, right? So we've very much scoped the project down to a very particular use case. targeting, that a use case that a lot of people have come to us both and said, this is what we need you to do. We're not expressing ourselves artistically through Crow.
Correct,
We do that on the weekends in our music.
Exactly. And if
Yeah.
you don't like our music, that's okay. But if you don't like what we're building, we probably went wrong somewhere, and we should build something different.
Exactly.
So how do you split up the roles then inside the community? Is everyone just basically like, there's a big pile of wood over there, we're going to start carry the wood, and like we need more water, so let's get the pails of water over there.
Mm-hmm. The chop wood carry water.
Yeah.
It's important.
So do you is that how you? But when do you start to differentiate on like what each of you do on the project?
I got an answer for that. I would love your take on this too, because I have a old wizened, I've seen it before. The pattern that I see is that people fall into the things they're good at.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little different from day jobs at some places where, hey, you took a job and now you have to do this thing. In an open source project, if you really are just passionate about writing, it doesn't matter what your role is. You're a maintainer, you're a contributor. Go do some tech talks. We love it. If you want to dig into really hairy pieces of code, go for it. Like, you could be that person just digging into the gnarliest pieces of the technology. And so for this project, it's kind of like, I think, organically happened.
Yeah.
I think just people have found where they're, it does go back to musicianship. When I play guitar, I kind of forget where I am and I make a lot of noise. He drums, that's not good when drummers do that. So he's methodical and meticulous and he keeps the rhythm, and I think that's very similar. I'm very passionate and I talk a lot, and you're like, okay, but let's make sense of that. So we collaborate really well.
Yeah, and I think the outcome of people falling into what they're good at and what they enjoy is that the team becomes extremely effective as well.
Yes.
It's easily one of the most effective groups of people that I've worked with in terms of building the right thing and building it very, very quickly as well.
And the traction too, the team, I think when I'm at AWS, and you probably have the same feeling, we have a team that I work on, under a director, but my team is bigger. I find the people to interact with, and I make what I think of as my larger team. And I think we do the same in an open source project. You have maintainers. Yes, somebody is a maintainer, they can merge pull requests, but the team gets larger based on its, how interesting it is, or is it solving problems? We have 56 contributors. 56 contributors in this project, which I think is really outstanding for it having, it's less than a year old. And we're really not, actually 7 months old, yeah. And I know we're really not marketing it, we're just trying to work on it, and people are finding interest. So we're finding these people that come in and they're like, hey, your docs are a little shoddy, can I help with that? Sure. Hey, this piece of code doesn't really work for me, I'm gonna do a really gnarly, very deep PR, and say, yeah, that's great, right? So the team actually grows organically rather than trying to have to post a job and have interview loops. People just show up and start contributing, and if they don't want to, they wander off, and it's fine, right?
So what are the big, hard, gnarly problems that makes this project fun?
I think making something that is compellingly interesting that interacts with the KRM, have a really simple user experience, is for us the biggest problem to solve.
What's the user experience like now? And maybe you could specify what we're discussing, because I mentioned Crow, but what is the complexity right now with the way things are done?
Yeah, so I can speak from the Google point of view, I suppose. We essentially have a lot of GKE customers, Google Kubernetes Engine, if anyone's not familiar, who essentially are building their internal developer platforms on top of Kubernetes, right? So they want to provide their end users, who are typically developers or data scientists, with some set of services. And those services are often not actually related to Kubernetes. It could be stand up a storage bucket, create a Cloud SQL instance, things like that. But they need to provide that service in a way that's easier for the end user to instantiate, and also is able to be monitored and controlled by a platform team. So that's the customer requirement, is I need to be able to provide my end users with these services in some simple and secure, governable way. And they choose to do this on Kubernetes because they get things like continuous reconciliation and Kubernetes RBAC out of the box. So they're essentially extending the Kubernetes platform from not just a orchestration layer for containers, but an orchestration layer for their whole cloud surface. Right? So we have a lot of customers now who are using Kubernetes as their interface to all of Google Cloud. and likewise with AWS, using it as their interface to AWS. The challenge there is you can't just give end users access to Kubernetes cluster admin. You can't just give them access to every cloud API. You need to be able to control that, and you need to be able to simplify it so that they can understand it. For example, if I want to create a Cloud SQL instance in Google Cloud and have it actually work, I also need to create IAM service accounts, probably a KMS crypto key. I probably need to configure HA for that Cloud SQL instance. And a lot of the time, the end user doesn't know what KMS is in Google Cloud. And they probably shouldn't need to know either. So the platform team needs to be able to group these things into some unit that is usable by an end user, so the end user can just say, here's my name for this Cloud SQL instance, and here's the region I want to run it in, and not have to worry about crypto keys and service accounts. The way that they're doing that today is often some amalgamation of using Helm charts, custom Go scripts, custom code of any language. There's Crossplane out there as well, Terraform. Yeah, there are plenty of automation tools that are unrelated to Kubernetes, like Terraform, Pulumi, there's a whole industry there. The challenge there is, there's two challenges, and maybe I'll address the first, then I'll pass to you because I've been rambling. But the challenge with non-Kubernetes-based automation tools like Terraform is that they're essentially incompatible with the way that applications are being deployed. Because typically these organizations will have set up CI/CD pipelines that are native to Kubernetes. So they'll be using things like Argo as their GitOps tool, right? And so they want to be able to use this same tool chain for all of their cloud resources. That's very hard to do with Terraform, and often the conclusion that I see people arrive at when they try and scale up with Terraform is they need to essentially build some RBAC system into their Git repo to give different teams or roles different levels of access to different Terraform files. And then when something goes wrong, finding which level something is going wrong at is extremely challenging. So that's essentially the problem with non-Kubernetes tools, is that it's incompatible with the Kubernetes toolchain, and to make it compatible requires a lot of upfront investment and ongoing maintenance cost. Do you want to talk about
and then
how
why,
to do it
and why
in the
Crow?
Kubernetes tooling?
So in contrast to that, there are also Kubernetes native solutions, but the problem is that's plural and there are multiple. Also, a lot of our customers predate even our product. They've been running Kubernetes since 2017, 18, and so they've built their own things, and they don't necessarily want to abandon those things. They have Kubernetes native resource orchestration, and that's not a problem for them. But they do want to be able to do the second part, which is bind things together, being able to say, yes, just give me a database. And database is Postgres, and it's in this region. I don't want to deal with any other, specifics. So the platform engineer needs to be able to say, okay, I'll wire all that up hard-coded, make it immutable. Those are our standards, and now you just get db.yaml. And the user just says, yeah, make it Postgres, put it in this region. That's enough for me, and all the rest of it just comes through what people are calling compound resources or compositions. And I think the thing that we saw is that we have a lot of customers that do that on their own, a lot of customers that are co-opting other pieces of projects, and then there are people using Kubevela or Crossplane or all these other things, and every one of those is different. So we have yet another opportunity to put a standardization on it. Again, I'm using Kubernetes to standardize all of this. Don't make me pick and choose what else to do on top of it. So we saw Crow as an opportunity to say, hey, if we could do a portable composition with a simplified schema that makes it really easy to do these compound resources and makes it easy to create that user interface and the API for it, then everybody could adopt it, and we could just sort of once again normalize the space.
Exactly.
It's an age-old problem in software, isn't it? Where
it's
everyone
turtles all the way down.
picks a different problem to solve, and they solve it. But the customer has those problems, but they also have lots of other problems that they have to solve. We have a few minutes left. What's the status of Crow right now, and what is coming up?
Yeah, so again, I think our first mission was, let's put this out in the community, see what people think. We've succeeded in that mission, knowing that there's interest, there's a lot of traction, people want to do things with it. I think the next question is, what are the core features that we can enable? So collections is one. People are using this, they say, I want looping. We don't necessarily want to do looping, but collections are very important to us. That's on the roadmap for next milestone is adoption.
Yeah.
Right, so that's the other piece. People want to use existing resources. You don't always want to create a new one. You just want to say, hey, this refers to that one. So those are the next 2 milestones, are adopted resources and collections. And at that point, I think we are basically code complete, and we'll enter sort of an alpha state and say, hey, now what do we do? As I said before, I think we're fairly aligned on wanting this to be sort of discretely scoped. We don't want it to boil the ocean. We don't want it to solve all the problems. We just want to normalize this space. So ideally, it would be something that people view as a feature of Kubernetes, right, rather than this new end-to-end ecosystem. So in that respect, we're talking sort of with SIG Cloud Provider right now is probably one of the places that sees the most synergy. I think in their maintainer track, they talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that might be something that we continue to talk about. And we just mostly want to hear what people are interested in and see what, it's community driven. So show up, tell us what we should do with it.
But right now it is in alpha stage, so don't run it in production. Definitely one of our big goals for the year is to get it to production ready.
Well, great. Well, good luck. Thank you so much for joining in this conversation. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for having us.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.